A samurai slash, lasting mere seconds, ignited a war between Japan and Britain. Beneath it lay a profound conflict rooted in a complete misunderstanding of each other's customs. In 1862, an English merchant was killed by a Satsuma samurai in Namamugi village. This incident would soon escalate into an unprecedented crisis, the bombardment of Kagoshima Bay by a British fleet. Yet, a more astonishing truth lay hidden beneath the surface. Why did the death of a single individual escalate into a war that staked the fate of nations? What was the true reason? This video will reveal 3 key points: why the Satsuma domain refused to yield, why Britain resorted to war, and how this incident influenced Japan's modernization. Now, let us delve into the truth of the Namamugi Incident, a mere seconds-long event that escalated into an international conflict. The main feature will also detail the clash of their respective claims and subsequent diplomatic strategies. In 1862, Japan's political landscape was in turmoil. It was a time of deepening conflict between foreign powers demanding the opening of the country and the Sano-Joi faction advocating the expulsion of barbarians. While advocating for Kobu Gatai, unity of the imperial court and the shogunate, the Satsuma domain was also at the forefront of the Sano-Joi movement. At its heart was Shimazu Hisamitsu, the domain lord's father. Hisamitsu planned to travel to Kyoto to reform the shogunate's administration. His grand procession, leading thousands of soldiers towards Kyoto, was a vivid display of the Satsuma domain's prestige. Meanwhile, numerous foreigners resided in Yokohama, engaged in trade with Japan. Unfamiliar with Japanese customs, they frequently encountered trouble. On the day of the incident, for British merchants, including Richard P. Richardson, rode horses near Namamugi village. They were unaware that Hisamitsu's grand procession was approaching. As they passed by, Richardson and his companions attempted to cut through the middle of the procession. This was an act absolutely forbidden by Japanese Bushido. The Satsuma samurai deemed this an act of disrespect towards Hisamitsu and drew their swords. A shocking event unfolded in mere seconds. Foreigners were cut down for ignoring warnings. Richardson sustained a fatal wound and died on the spot. The other 3 were injured and barely managed to escape back to Yokohama. The incident concluded in an instant, but its repercussions were immeasurable. The Satsuma side asserted that punishing foreigners who committed disrespect was a righteous act. In their cultural understanding, obstructing a daimyo's procession was a grave offense punishable by death. The British, however, did not believe Japanese law applied to foreigners. To them, this was an unprovoked attack on defenseless civilians. This clash of cultures and legal perceptions became the primary cause for the major conflict that followed. So, why did the divide between the 2 sides remain unbridged? Upon receiving reports from the injured who had fled, British Minister Sir Rutherford Alcock was enraged. From his perspective, protecting his own nationals was the highest priority. Alcock demanded immediate arrest and severe punishment of the culprits from the shogunate, along with compensation for the victims. However, the shogunate could not act promptly. Although nominally under the shogunate's control, the Satsuma domain functioned almost as a semi-independent state. Direct intervention by the shogunate to hand over Satsuma samurai could severely undermine its prestige. The shogunate urged the Satsuma domain to resolve the matter independently, but Satsuma stubbornly refused to yield. They continued to assert that Hairi Aiuchi, slang for disrespect, was a legitimate act, and there was no reason to surrender the culprits. Exasperated by this situation, Alcock finally resorted to drastic measures. He informed the shogunate that he would negotiate directly with the Satsuma domain and resort to military force if his demands were not met. In response to Britain's demands, the shogunate ultimately promised to pay an enormous indemnity of £100,000. This amount was approximately 1/3 of the shogunate's annual revenue at the time. However, Britain's demands were not limited to money. They also sought the punishment of the Namamugi Incident culprits and a formal apology from the Satsuma domain. Why couldn't the shogunate take a firm stance against Satsuma? By agreeing to monetary compensation, Britain gained a pretext to justify military action against the Satsuma domain. The demand for the culprit's surrender became increasingly forceful. The Satsuma domain, unyielding to the shogunate's directives, continued to assert its righteousness. They believed that losing face as samurai would compromise the very existence of their domain. Negotiations completely broke down. The British government decided on a punitive attack against the Satsuma domain. The failure of diplomatic talks finally escalated into armed conflict. In 1863, a portion of the British East India Squadron 7 warships invaded Kagoshima Bay. Their objectives were to demonstrate power to the Satsuma domain and enforce the demands for compensation and the surrender of the culprits. The Satsuma domain had anticipated the British fleet's arrival and had reinforced its coastal batteries in preparation. However, their firepower was far inferior to that of the modern British fleet. The British fleet seized Satsuma ships and began attacking the batteries. Kagoshima city itself was indiscriminately bombarded, and many houses were set ablaze. The Satsuma domain resisted desperately but was overwhelmed by the immense difference in firepower. Kagoshima Bay swiftly transformed into a battlefield, engulfed in destruction and chaos. After several days of bombardment, the British fleet temporarily withdrew. The Satsuma domain suffered devastating damage, yet their fighting spirit remained undiminished. However, this war taught the Satsuma domain a profound lesson. Experiencing the overwhelming military might of the West firsthand, it became a turning point for them to realize the folly of Sano Joy, expelling barbarians. Wishing for the war's end, the Satsuma domain maneuvered for direct negotiations with Britain, bypassing the shogunate. This diplomatic shift was nothing short of astonishing. The two parties then reconciled and began building a new alliance. Why did these former adversaries suddenly join forces? The Satsuma domain purchased the latest military technology and weaponry from Britain, rapidly advancing the domain's modernization. This signified a complete departure from the Sano Joy ideology. This war became one of the major factors that led the Satsuma domain to oppose the shogunate and move towards its overthrow. Ironically, the conflict with Britain paved the way for Satsuma's future. The Namamugi Incident and the Anglo-Satsuma War are etched into history as crucial, unavoidable events in Japan's opening and modernization process. Firstly, the Satsuma domain refused to yield until the end because they valued their samurai honor and the prevailing Japanese custom that disrespecting a daimyo's procession was a capital offense. Secondly, Britain resorted to war based on the logic of imperial powers at the time, that military force was permissible to ensure the security of their nationals and maintain international prestige. Finally, the Anglo-Satsuma War brought a significant turning point for the Satsuma domain. Witnessing Britain's overwhelming military might, it became the catalyst for them to shift their policy from Sano Joy to opening the country. The short-lived war, while born of mutual misunderstanding, ultimately led to an ironic historical outcome, accelerating Japan's modernization. The process by which a mere seconds-long samurai slash escalated into an international war that dramatically altered Japan's destiny was perhaps a poignant narrative demonstrating how vast cultural and customary differences can spark immense conflict.
History still hides untold stories. Subscribe for more forgotten history.